Today's video, we are going to raid my shop and fill these 2 boxes here to build the ultimate beginner tackle box. I'm not gonna leave you hanging either. We're gonna talk about how to rig them and the gear used. And there's one bonus tip in this. It's all with the same rod and reel, so everything we put in here has to work on that rod combo. Without further ado though, let's go to my tackle shop, bust open some trays, and fill some boxes. So this is what we have to choose from. A whole bunch of plastics, and we're also going to rip apart all my tackle trays in my kayak because there's a lot of lures. We're not gonna go through too much. Again, we wanna make it multi-purpose, easy for beginners, and we're gonna show you how to rig it. And we're gonna pick one of these rods, and we'll save that for the end, so stay tuned so you know what gear to use. We're gonna rip these apart, but before we get into the tackle trays and destroy my gear, we're gonna go ahead and make our way over to the bait wall and pick out 3 different plastics that I think are critical and have a ton of different uses. So in the world of soft plastics, there's a whole bunch of confusing stuff out there, right? There's a whole bunch of different designs that may be hard for a beginner or even experienced angler to be like, okay, this looks cool, I want to use this, so on and so forth. But we're gonna get started with the most critical bait that anybody can use, and that is going to be a stick bait. So we're gonna grab a color. Again, I'll give some recommendations on colors later when we rig it, but we are going to grab 1 clear watercolor and 1 stained watercolor. Clear water for me, you can't go wrong with a good watermelon red. And then for stained, we're gonna go ahead and make our way up and grab a pack of black and blue. Now I'll fish this in clear water as well, but just to cover the basis, if you're a beginner, we have 2 different colors, watermelon red for clear, black and blue for stained. So we'll lock in the stick bait. So plastic number 2, and you'll see my theory behind this as well later, right? Because all these have to be multi-use. We need to be able to use every one of these for multiple applications, right? Because we don't want to spend too much money on terminal tackle and have a whole bunch of different options to confuse us when we're just starting. Stick bait was 1. Number 2, absolutely for me, I think it is such a diverse multi-purpose bait, is going to be a craw or some sort of a creature bait. I generally gravitate to the craws because it does have a lot more action on your legs. This is our combat craw, and we can use these on jigs, on a shaky head, a whole bunch of different stuff, which we'll cover later on the rigging. But we're gonna lock in a pack of solid green pumpkin black flake craws, and then a secondary color for stain, just because I love diversity. We're gonna go with a June bug. We have our clear and we have our stained watercolor and a crawfish / creature bait style plastic. When it comes to paddle tails and other style baits like that, I love a paddle tail, okay? But I think for a beginner, the better pick, if we had to choose a 3rd plastic, is a fluke, okay? This is a single tail fluke. You can use a split tail fluke, but flukes are, in my opinion, one of the best soft plastics to use. You can use them as a trailer bait. You can throw them weightless. You can put them on a shaky head. You can do a lot of things with them, right? So we're gonna go ahead and go with a pearl white, a classic pearl white fluke. We'll go with a chartreuse fluke. And this is gonna be aimed more at our trailer applications in this, which you'll see towards the end of the video when we start rigging them up. But we'll go ahead and lock in a single tail fluke in both the chartreuse and the pearl white. So as you can see here, I do not have a lot of hard baits. I'm not a hard bait guy by nature. I love using my products. So by default, we have a lot less hard baits than the average person would, right? So let's go ahead and crack this open, and I will show you the ones that I think for a beginner you absolutely have to have, because there's a lot of them out there that get confusing. So right off the rip, okay, one of my confidence baits when I first started was a lipless crankbait, or as most of you probably know it as, a rattle trap, right? And this is a Bill Lewis. This is one of my favorite colors. This is probably my most used hard bait ever since I first started fishing. And we'll explain why when we go inside. But we're gonna lock in a lipless crankbait. Where we're looking at is the top water. And this is a Berkley Chopo, okay? I like either the Whopper Plopper, some of you probably know what that is right here, or the Chopo, but just for the sake of them being tangled, we're gonna go with a Whopper Plopper / Chopo style top water, okay, as a staple in the box. And reason being is you can steady retrieve this and it does its work, right? Treble hooks make it easier to hook up on fish. You're throwing this in open water. And again, we'll talk about that as we break down each bait. But for our top water, we're locking in the Berkley Chopo. Now for the fun, let's rip open trays. And trays and trays. Sticks, we already got stick baits. Big worms, no, we're gonna skip them for right now. But there is something important we need in here. Let's pop this guy open. And this will be useful later. All these worms, all we want out of this are bobber stops. That's what we're getting out of this box. Pack of bobber stops, super cheap. You can get them on Amazon in bulk packs. I prefer the KastKing ones or the Epic Bait ones because they have a bigger stop right there and it prevents it from going in your eyelets depending on the rod you're using. So we're gonna grab these real quick and then break open the other boxes. Frogs. We're actually not gonna put a frog in this box. The reason being is a lot of people have a hard time getting used to hook setting and the timing of a frog. So for a beginner, I am not going to put a frog in that box, believe it or not. Instead, we're gonna go to our terminal tackle here. Let's see what other plastics we got sitting around. No, we're good. Bonus points if you put some sunscreen in your kayak and some scent, but that's not the goal today. Terminal tackle, let's bust this open. We're gonna grab a few things out of here and then move to the moving baits. Some of y'all might know exactly where I'm going with it. Terminal tackle. A lot of different hook options out there, but we're gonna go with a few different things, right? And the whole point of this, these baits have to be multi-purposed, right? So we have craws, we have stick baits, and we have flukes. So there's a few different things in here we're gonna go with, starting with one of my favorite things on the planet, and that is a shaky head. And this is one of the reasons we do not have a structure jig in this kit, is because jig fishing, if you don't know what that is a jig like so. A lot of people struggle to feel sensitive bite. The hook guard here, it's a little more difficult to master a bottom jig. And now, is it a very important technique? Of course. But in my opinion, the whole point is your bait is going to sit up like this. And we'll talk about this more in a little bit. But we're gonna put the structure jig away for the sake of this video. And we are going to instead add our shaky head. And this, we'll grab one hook just for the box for now. But you will see why the shaky head is very important for all of those plastics. So we'll lock in a shaky head. We're gonna go with a 3/0 extra wide gap hook. And last but not least, what we need in here is some bullet weights. Now, you can go from an 1/8 to a 1/4 to a 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce when you're flipping, right? But for this box, for this demo, we are gonna go with a 1/8 tungsten weight. You can use lead weights, but we'll go and lock in a tungsten bullet weight. Doesn't seem like a lot of terminal tackle, but when we show you the different uses for all these, it's gonna make a lot more sense. Honorable mention is a wacky rig style hook, okay? But if you don't wanna spend the money on a wacky, you can always do it with your wide gap. But just for the demonstration, we'll go ahead and throw this in the pile as well. Let's crack this bad bee open. Oh, chatterbaits, bladed jigs, whatever you wanna call them. We are going to crack this open and we are going to pick, let's just grab one. Well, we got one over there. Let's get a black and blue. black and blue chatterbait or Evo tungsten for you guys that will get technical and jump my bones in the comments. And then we have a white one sitting on the drawer. So we got our black and blue and ta-da, a white. All right, so we'll lock those in. We have stain water and clear water and a bladed jig. Now let's move on to our last bait. Again, light tackle, beginner boxes. We got one more bait to pick. There you are. Because I use them so much, spinner bait. Very anticlimactic, right? We got a spinner bait, and there's another one right there. So, spinner baits. We are just gonna grab one of these for now for the demonstration, but absolutely a great lure across the country. Anybody can use it, and it's very simple to use. You can get really technical with these, but for now, we're gonna lock in a spinner bait as our last and final bait. Doesn't really seem like a lot, right? Well, let's go ahead and go in the office. We're gonna talk about where we use these things and how we rig up our plastics to make these as diverse as you can, right? And then we'll talk about the gear, because again, everything here has to go on the same rod and reel. The hardest thing now is to figure out how to get in the office with all this stuff. Grab a tripod with hooks in the hands. All right, look at it. Just look at it. All right, so made it here with minimal droppage. We're gonna break down the plastics first, because in my opinion, this is the most detailed part, and most of you guys are gonna swipe anyways here soon, because we're done grabbing stuff out of the shop. So we're gonna break down how to rig the plastics and my methodology to why those three are the best for beginners. And then we'll talk the moving baits after. So let's go ahead and get some plastics open and start rigging. All right, plastic number one. You're not a plastic, you are a fishing line. I'll set you right there. Plastic number one, the stick, a stick bait. We'll go ahead and use the watermelon red. That probably picks up better on camera. The stick bait. Why is the stick bait very important? A stick bait can be rigged probably 5 to 6 different ways. And like I said, when you're just getting started, simple is better, right? So mastering one bait 5 to 6 different ways is gonna be a lot more effective than trying to master 10 different soft plastics, right? So we'll go ahead and walk through my favorite few ways for a beginner to use a stick bait, starting with how it's sitting right here in a wacky rig. And a wacky rig is gonna be fished in a finesse presentation. It's going to fall just like you're looking at it now, right? It's gonna wobble on the drop. You can fish it with a weightless wacky, or you can get a weighted wacky. But for the sake of this, we want a slow drop presentation, right? And fishing a wacky rig is super easy. You can do it on spinning gear, you can do it on casting gear, and you're gonna rig it by simply just taking your wacky hook that we pulled, or you can use an extra wide gap hook, and you're gonna rig it right through the middle of this bait, just like so. You see how it's just in the middle? Obviously you're gonna tie your line to the top right there, but when you cast this out in your docks and your structure and your cover, it's going to fall, and it's a fish catcher. I mean, I don't wacky too often, but the wacky rig is arguably one of the most popular ways to fish a stick bait. So that's rig number one, wacky. So technique number two is my personal favorite for a stick bait, and that is going to be using our extra wide gap hook here and the stick bait. And now the bobber stop and the weight come in handy here, but I'm gonna show you how to weightless Texas rig this first, and it's very, very easy. You're gonna take the hook and put it through a 1/4 inch or so of the top of the bait, like that, nose hooked, right? And then we're gonna slide this up and turn this. Now, if you have your line tied on, it's gonna make it a little easier. See, like that. And where you wanna pay attention to if you're new is if you see this bottom part right there. You see how that hook is protruding right here through here? That's gonna be your insert point. So we're gonna go ahead and pierce it through. Now, what's awesome about Texas rigging on an extra wide gap hook is you can tuck your tip in like that, and now you have a weedless presentation. And what's gonna happen is when that fish clamps on this bait, it's gonna expose the hook right there. Now Texas rigs are great. They do fall forward like this, right? So if you are fishing it weightless, it is going to be another slow presentation you can throw and cover. The exception to this is when we add our bobber stop and our weight, and we're going to put one on our line real quick so we can show you exactly what it looks like. All right, so this is our bobber stop and our line, and what's going to be useful with this is if you want to peg that weight, meaning keep the weight from sliding. So how you're going to do this, if you've never used bobber stops before, you're going to find that circle, might be hard to focus, that circle in the bobber stop through that hole, like so. And you're just going to pull the bobber stop off the line. So once your bobber stop is on the line, right, we're going to take our bullet weight of choice and you're just going to slide it in the line, right? And that's going to come down here and just sit on that bobber stop just like so. Now for knots, we're not going to do knot tying 101, but I choose to do a Palomar, and then we're just going to adjust our worm back on the bait and it pegs that line down. And all you got to do is slide this bobber stop to adjust your length, right? So this is what our pegged Texas rig bait will look like. And my personal preference is you can adjust this bobber stop to increase the line distances. What that's going to do is when this weight hits, this bait is going to slow fall behind it. So if you're fishing near heavy cover and you don't want it to snag up, trees, brush, I always peg this down. And a little tip is leave a little bit of a gap right there. So when that weight swings, you don't risk it pinching off your line on the eyelet of the hook, right? So that's rig number 2 for our stick bait, is a weighted Texas rig, right? And you can do it weightless or you can do it with the tungsten weight attached. Now we're going to go ahead while we have this Texas rig rigged up and grab another bait, because this is one of the uses for the craw too. So same thing with your crawfish presentations. You can Texas rig these. This is actually my preferred Texas rig bait, is a craw. And what's awesome about a crawfish style bait in this is on the drop, these legs are going to kick. So we've got to feed it through. Boom, perfect, just like that. So we got our Texas rig craw, right? And you got them flanged feet. And when this bait drops, those feet are gonna kick all the way down. This is a great presentation as well. A little smaller than your stick bait, but you know, we have multi-use, right? We can do Texas rig with this EWG with the craw to get some action on the drop, or we can use it as a stick bait presentation, right? So weighted Texas rig or weightless, right? You can throw the craw weightless too, are great ways to use these baits. Now, I want to show you one more way I rig it, and then we'll move into the craw, and then lastly, the fluke. The last and final technique for the stick is a shaky head, right? And a lot of you are like, oh, use a jig, use a jig. Well, here's a standard skirted jig, right? And a lot of people have problems learning how to jig fish, okay? They snag a lot easier in cover, sensitizing your bite, right? The fish generally drop this bait faster than they would a shaky head, because a shaky head by nature is lighter and all they feel is the plastic. They're not getting a harder lead head, right? This weed guard here. So we're gonna go ahead and throw the jig to the side and we are going to talk shaky head. Now you can get these in a whole bunch of different sizes, right? We're not gonna talk about the different sizes, but if you're new to fishing, heavier weight makes it sink faster. Okay, so depending on what plastic you're using, if it's a salted bait, if you want it to drop a little bit slower in the water, right? If you're fishing deeper water, go with a heavier shaky head. If you're fishing shallow, fish with a lighter one. But for the rigging, a lot of people underestimate a stick bait on a shaky head here. And we'll go ahead and use the watermelon one so you can see it. But if you see the screw lock at the bottom there, that is where you're going to be screwing it in. Now for me, I like to match up my stick to the shaky. And if you can see, I have to take a little off our stick baits. I'll take about a 1/2 inch off, and I'm gonna screw it into this screw lock, right? And the reason I want it there is because I want my hook to go through the fattest portion of that bait for durability. And you can see where that matches up right there, right? And you're just gonna stab her through. Now, when you stab this one through, don't go straight through. You wanna come at an angle, right? So that way it stays weedless. So we're gonna pull that in just like so. And that is our shaky head worm. And what's nice is it is super weedless, like extremely, but that hook is at an angle out. So when that fish bites, right, you're gonna get it exposed. But this is a phenomenal presentation. Shaky heads in general. I really think it is probably my favorite technique to catch fish anywhere is a shaky head because of the diversity of a shaky head itself. You can put a fluke, you can put a craw, you can put a stick bait, right? So we'll use that to segue into this next one. The stick bait obviously is a summary. We did a wacky rig, we did a weightless Texas rig, we did a weighted Texas rig, and we did a shaky head. Now, bonus tips, if you're a Ned rig fisherman or a finesse fisherman, right, we can take this off, and most stick baits break off into pieces, and you got yourself a little finesse bait, right? This will go on a net or a mushroom jig, right? And just be a little tiny larva looking bait. But for the principle of this, we went with shaky head to limit you guys on how much tackle you gotta buy. So we got our stick baits. Let's finish up with the craws. So we already talked about the Texas rig before. So we already discussed how the craw is also a very good Texas rig bait, both weighted and weightless. So we'll go ahead and just put that old boy away, and we'll show you a craw and a shaky head and why it's a little different than the stick bait. It's gonna be rigged the exact same way on this shaky head here. You're gonna go through the nose of the craw and rig that up, right? And then we are going to find our match point and stab the old boy. And just like the stick bait, here's our presentation, right? But the difference is with a crawfish, when it is on bottom, these claws are going to float, right? So it is going to be standing up just like this in a defensive position. These claws are going to be kicking, right? As you hop it, you can also swim this bait and the claws will kick. So shaky head is obviously the most diverse terminal tackle item in our kit right now. It is extremely beneficial as a new angler to learn how to fish a shaky head because again, it's just like fishing a jig, only it's a little more weedless and there's a little more options you can do with it. So craw on a weightless EWG Texas rig, a craw on a weighted Texas rig, a craw on a shaky head are my 3 ways to fish it. Now, as a bonus kicker, obviously craws make fantastic jig trailers. So having a good set of crawfish for staying in dirty water covers you pretty much in any application. You can put them on the back of a bladed jig, which we'll show you in a minute. You can put them on a swim jig, on a structure jig. Crawfish are one of the most diverse plastics on this planet. And that is why a lot of the bigger, more experienced anglers use it. That is why newer anglers have a lot of success on it. The #1 plastic in your kit, besides the stick, because it's so easy to use, this is the most diverse, a craw. Final plastic is a fluke. Now, a lot of times you'll see a split tail fluke with 2 tails, but ours we designed with a single fluke, single tail, and that is for other applications. But as you can see, I am having fun playing with this. This is how it will sit on a shaky. You see that tail? You're gonna rig it the same exact way, right? Screw in the nose, just like you would any other bait. Now some people, and this is the pro tip here, if you're rigging a fluke on a shaky head, flip it backwards, right? And there's a reason for that. So the way the nose is shaped on some flukes are going to hit your line, your shank on your hook. Now, if you have a fluke that was designed with a hook keeper, that line in the middle, that also serves as a weed guard. So we're gonna insert our shaky head into our fluke, and boom. We have a nice little bottom bait fish feeding. When it hops, that tail's gonna go nuts. And more importantly, look look at your hook. It's hiding inside of the hook keeper. So it's extremely weedless, but it will still slide down and give you plenty of hook gap, right? That's that little gap right there in between the plastic and the hook. So flip your flukes upside down, little tip. This is a phenomenal bottom bait. Phenomenal, okay? A fluke on a shaky head is one of my favorite ways to catch smallmouth and largemouth. I've also caught bowfin with it, saltwater fish. But you can see the action is incredible. So just imagine hopping this on bottom. That's what you're getting. That is crazy action. In my opinion, better than anything else that we have, right? Already shown you. But just hopping that bait on bottom, that is gonna have a ton of freaking action. And that's what you're looking for. You can pause it, let it do its thing, and go back to it. Finesse, you can power hop it. So fluke on a shaky, right? That's rig number one for the fluke. Rig number two, and probably the most popular way to fish a fluke, a weightless EWG hook, right? And now we're not gonna get into drop shotting because other people argue that. This is for beginners, right? A weightless fluke. And the reason being is you can walk it, you can drop it, you can throw it in cover, and it is such a natural finesse presentation for these fish. And you're going to line it up just like we did our stick bait. Just like so. Okay. And what's great about a fluke is it has such a slow fall. You can dart this bait back and forth, right? Just with subtle rod tip twitches. And it is a fish catcher, okay? In all times of the year. Relate this to a jerk bait if you've heard of those. They're more of like a pencil style hard bait. But a weightless fluke is rig number two, probably the most popular. Get yourself familiar. If the bite is tough, this will catch fish. Our third and final use for the fluke, a bladed jig trailer. All right, one of the most popular trailers on your bladed jig, which is another bait in our box, is a fluke. Because when this blade shakes back and forth, because that's what it's doing, it's going back and forth, it's hitting the head, it's making noise, this tail is going nuts right behind it, okay? Single tail flukes are probably the most popular bladed jig trailer out there. And since a bladed jig is a critical piece of our beginner box, it's a multi-purpose bait. It just made sense to pick the fluke, right? I was gonna go with the paddle tail, but in my opinion, you're getting more diversity out of a fluke, being able to weightless fish it, put it on a shaky, and also combo as your trailers for some of your hard baits, right? So the third and final use is a trailer on a bladed jig, and we'll just segue that right into our chatterbait, and I'll tell you guys where we're gonna fish it. Chatterbaits, bladed jigs, whatever you wanna call it, it doesn't matter. This is probably, arguably, the most popular search bait on the market. Now, obviously we have a black and blue for our stained water applications. This is a Z-Man Evo Elite Tungsten. I like jackhammers, $5 chatterbaits work too, right? From Z-Man, other bladed jigs work too, Thunder Crickets, all those are the same thing. But a bladed jig is such a good search bait. And by search bait, I mean you're covering water, right? You're not really gonna fish these slow. It's an exposed hook, right? So if you drop this in the cover and you let it sit, be ready to snag, right? You're gonna be burning pad edges with this, fishing open water, fishing near schooling fish when you see them blowing up on bait, right? Fishing this around wood if you're confident enough. This blade will refract a lot of that cover, but it is exposed. A bladed jig is such a phenomenal bait, especially in stained water. Those fish have that lateral line. They can track the vibration from them. But more importantly, you have the combination of flash and sound, right? And honestly, this is probably my go-to for trying to find fish. If I'm fishing around any sort of structure on the edges of hydrilla, on pads, it is a fish catcher. So when you are fishing your bladed jigs, just remember whites and shad colors, a lot of colors out there. I did a video on it in the past. A short white and black and blue pretty much cover you, right? And for your trailers, you can use the craws, You can use the flukes. Go ahead and rig a craw up for you. And with your bladed jig, it's gonna be the same way. Measure your shank to your craw. Now there's two different ways you can rig it. You can rig it sideways so it sits like that. That's the most popular. Or you can rig it so it's flat, right? And we're just gonna put it on sideways because that's the most popular application, right? And this is gonna be your trailer, right? So you have those legs are gonna be kicking, going nuts behind the bait, right? As it's shaking its little tail. And you got yourself a stained water fish catcher right here. So hard bait number one is going to be a bladed jig. So very different than a bladed jig, we have a spinnerbait. I prefer 2-blade spinnerbaits for, again, it's another form of search bait. And the reason I put a spinnerbait in here, it's very easy to fish. You steady retrieve it, okay? You throw it around the same areas you throw a bladed jig. This can come through wood a little better. This wire here acts like a deflector, okay? It is an open hook still, right? But a spinnerbait is super diverse in all times of the year. You can throw it in your cover, you can throw it in your pads. It's great open water bait, especially if you're seeing fish schooling. That's what the blades are simulating, right? And we're gonna keep it short on a spinnerbait, but the tip I have for a new angler with a spinnerbait is fish it without a trailer, okay? You're gonna get a lot less short striking, meaning the fish isn't gonna come just eat the trailer and pull it off, right? It's gonna just grab the hook. So I like paddle tails on the back. This is a peachy color from Brazalo. It is a smaller business, but generally speaking, if you're just starting, I would go without the trailer, throw it, steady retrieve it, hang on. Another tip is during the windy days where wind is pushing up against bank lines, I tend to throw a spinnerbait a little more when there's cloud cover and there's wind. So in clear days, clear sunny days with light wind, I'll go with a bladed jig. I'll swap to a spinnerbait when it's a little more overcast with some wind, right, where I can see the baits getting pushed up against the bank, or if I can see fish moving and schooling, right? So spinnerbait is definitely one of my favorites. I always have one tied on. This one has been abused. You saw it was in my kayak in my cup. I use it all the time. From beginning to end of your fishing career, you're gonna want to familiarize yourself with a spinnerbait. So hard bait number two is spinnerbait. We'll go ahead and move on to the actual hard baits with the sticky treble hooks, and we'll throw this one in the box. So a lot of you are probably like, Andrew doesn't have a frog in a box. Yeah, because when it comes to topwater and being a beginner, the Chapo is the better bait. And I can't believe I'm saying that. And hear me out. So hollow body frogs are a lot more difficult to master the art of the hook set and the timing. And a lot of new anglers struggle to catch fish on a frog, and they inevitably just give up topwater fishing. So for the sake of this video, we are going to go with a Chapo. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with what this bait is, this back part spins. So when all you got to do is cast it and reel it. And this goes on the back of the water, right? Makes a lot of noise. It makes a lot of water commotion. And because you have these treble hooks, you have two different chances for the fish to hook up. So, you know, obviously you're not going to be fishing this in heavy cover. These are going to snag. But when it comes to fishing a Chapo, open water scenarios on pad edges, like right off of the pads and rivers, it is arguably impossible to beat, right? So our top water bait for beginners will be a whopper plopper / Chapo. I go with the more natural style colors, right? Or whites or blacks, right? This is going in the box. The Chapo, whopper plopper, whatever you want to call it. This is our top water bait for beginners. Last but not least, one of the first hard baits I ever mastered was a lipless crankbait or a rattle trap. That is the name of the brand. So a lipless is phenomenal in open water. You can hear that. It's got rattles in it. You steady retrieve it, bring it in. You can bring it near grass. It fishes nose down because this line tie, right? So generally this nose here is going to refract a lot of that vegetation because these hooks are going to be trailing behind the bait, right? So you can generally bring this around grass a lot easier. It's not 100% weedless, but it is a very, very good hard bait to start. Now, obviously crankbaits and deep diving crankbaits and square bills, the ones with the clear nose, those are phenomenal. But if you are new to fishing and you have not fished certain fisheries yet, you don't know depth, you don't know underwater structure. So if you get a diving crankbait that dives too deep, you're gonna be in a world of hurt, okay? I don't want you guys to lose money getting into fishing. You're going to, but you know what I mean. I don't want you guys to buy baits that are useless in your fisheries, right? You can throw these in ponds, you can throw these shallow, you can let them sink and throw them deep, right? There are ways to weight them by adding different terminal tackle, like the hooks. They're bigger sizes, so a lipless crankbait is the final bait in the box. I'll go ahead and show you guys what our boxes look like. And if you haven't already guessed, drop a comment on what size rod you think these are all going on. All right, folks, our beginner boxes, plastics, hard baits. And the reason I left some spacing is because I would throw a red or another color rattle trap and maybe another color Chopo, right? And we got our section for our terminal tackle, our clear and stained bladed jigs, and I'd probably have another spinner bait in here as well, just to cover the spectrum on color. So 2 boxes for everything you need to get started, right? Let's go ahead and look at the rod and reel and we'll close it out. So every single technique that we showed you today can go in this combo right here. What is it? This is a medium heavy fast action rod. The length can depend on what you want, right? A medium heavy fast action rod. Now reel, you can either get a medium heavy spinning reel, you can go with a casting reel, right? And you can run everything on about 20 to 30 pound braid. I wanted you guys to be able to take everything in this video, get one combo, a medium heavy rod, fill up 2 boxes and get out there fishing. Minimal money spent on all the different plastics, right? We got 3 different styles of plastics, a few different hard baits, but we can catch fish in any body of water, in any part of the water column with just this rod. Hope you guys learned something. You know, getting fishing is extremely fun, getting outdoors, right? You don't have to break the bank. And some of the most critical techniques you can learn are right here. Don't gotta spend an arm and a leg.